Well guys, Dead Stick Adventures has upgraded. We're here with a 55 Baby Baron, except this is an E model Baby Baron, and this one has nearly 600 horsepower. We're here at Command Flight Training, Murray Bridge in South Australia, with this gorgeous 1979 E55 Baby Baron. Now, it's owned by the guys over at Flying Logan Unit Trust at Aldinga Airfield in SA and maintained by our friends at Aldinga Aero. Now, they own another couple of cool aircraft, and we actually did a video on their 172 XP, which I'll link up here. Definitely go check that out before you watch this one. For this video, same as our other walkarounds, I'm going to do a full tour of the aircraft, show you all the ins and outs, and after that, we're going to take it up for a fly in this gorgeous weather and see how she performs. Now, if you're familiar with our other walkaround videos, if you're not, go check them out, but we're going to do it in the same format. So walk around, flight, see what you think with a bit of a conclusion at the end. The Beechcraft Baron was first released in 1961 as a replacement for the Beechcraft Travel Air. Now, both the Travel Air and the Baron were originally based on Beechcraft Bonanza fuselages, except they got rid of the V-tail and replaced it with a conventional tail. They also decided, with the introduction of the Baron, to get rid of the fairly anemic 180 horsepower engines in the Travel Air and replace them instead with some Continental IO 470 engines producing 260 horsepower a side. So a couple of years after the introduction of the Baron came along the A55. Now with that, Beechcraft stretched the fuselage by 10 inches and added a 6th seat to the 3rd row. A few years later, the B55 came out, and they're the most prolific of all of the 55 Baby Barons. They produced nearly 2,000 of them. They came with a higher gross weight, and they're definitely the one that you're going to find most often in the used marketplace. Next in line was the C55. So that one came out with bigger engines. They moved from the IO 470 up to the IO 520, the 285 horsepower engines that this one is fitted with. After that came the D model, where they went from 2-blader props to 3-blader props as standard. And finally, they settled on the E55, which is what Yankee India Charlie is. This one's got the 3-bladers, the 520, and also the E55 came out with 172 US gallon fuel tanks. Now, as a bit of a side note, in 1967, Beechcraft decided to produce a unicorn. They brought out the Baron 56 TC. They're a super rare aircraft and I absolutely love them. If anybody's got one, please reach out in the US or in Australia. I would love to fly it. Now, the reason Beechcraft bought out this 56 TC, they only produced less than 100 of them, is they wanted to test out the new engines for their upcoming Beechcraft Duke, the mighty Lycoming TIO 541, producing an unbelievable 380 horsepower a side. So at the time that 760 horsepower 56 TC beast was produced, it was actually the fastest production piston twin in the world, and it even rivaled some of Beechcraft's early King Airs. A couple of interesting stats: service ceiling 32,200 feet, and it stored over 930 litres of fuel in the wings. Unfortunately, production ceased for the 55 Baby Baron in 1983. Beechcraft still produces the Baron to this day, but they only make the 58 model, which is the longer one with the A36 fuselage and an extra window. Up front, this one being the E model, has the Continental IO 520. They make a continuous 285 horsepower, which is an upgrade over the earlier models with just the 260 horsepower IO 470s. Now, all Barons have non-counter-rotating propellers. This is a bonus in terms of maintenance because it means parts are interchangeable between the engines. However, it does mean that we have a critical engine, so for the pilot, possibly not quite as ideal. The alternators sit nice and proud out the front here. They went to a gear-driven alternator instead of the belt-driven like in the earlier models. And the really cool thing that you'll notice on these, what they call big engine Baby Barons, the ones with the 520s, is this giant big air scoop sitting atop them, which I think looks really, really cool. If 285 horsepower isn't enough for you, there is a coal mill STC upgrade available to mount the larger 58 Barons engines in it, which is the Continental 550. Now, being a later 55, this one's also got the stretched nose on it, giving it quite a large usable space in the nose locker. Now, the owner of this aircraft uses the nose locker to store all that stuff that you don't really want in your cabin. So chocks, extra oil, and all your wiping equipment for cleaning the aircraft. This aircraft has a 5,300 pound maximum takeoff weight in American, or 2,404 kilos. Now, the full tank's useful load is only around 250 kilos, but that's because it's got the whole 172 US gallon or 166 usable fuel tanks in it. Now, they're 3 fuel tanks plumbed together with one central fill point. The cool thing is it gives you just over 5 hours endurance, which is excellent, especially when you consider that we're doing 185 to 190 knots TAS. Now, that's typical between 5,000 to 10,000 feet at around 50 to 75 degrees reach of peak. Now, if you are hot, heavy, or you go higher, yes, if you go higher, the TAS will creep up a little bit, but we do find she tends to fall off the step a bit. These naturally aspirated engines really seem to produce that punch between the 5 and 10,000 foot mark. Mounted to the trailing edge of the wing, much the same as you'd find on an A36 Bonanza, are these massive single slotted Fowler flaps. They're either 0 degrees, 15 degrees, or 30 for landing, and damn do they produce some lift. The other thing you'll find on these Barons is somewhat unique. It's actually an aileron trim tab, so you can trim the ailerons in a position to keep the aircraft flying wings level, or perhaps you may want one wing high if you're flying asymmetric, or if you've got an imbalanced fuel load. So one of the options in these later 55 models was to have 2 extra seats in the very rear in the 3rd row. The problem was, due to weight flexibility and that limited maximum takeoff weight, you quite often couldn't actually use them unless the passengers were very light. You also run into a balance consideration as well, which fortunately with the big 300 pound nose locker, you could bring them back into weight if you had people in the back. The other issue was, of course, people either had to get in through the baggage door, and this, believe it or not, is the bigger of the 2 baggage doors available. The other one's about a half size, or they had to clamber in through the front and down over all of the front seats to get into the back. So you can see why a lot of owners, this one included, have gone for just using this area for extra baggage space instead. And of course, that brings down your insurance premiums too. So the undercarriage in these Beechcraft aircraft is quite unique. So let's have a look at that. So what we've got is a fully mechanical system powered by an electric motor that's plugged into a gearbox that sits just underneath where you'll actually sit. On the other side of it, it's got a manual handle so you can wind the gear down if required. And they're very robust gear, but the whole thing is set up with mechanical linkages and push rods. So if you get any damage, for example, like if you had a bird strike on one of the gear doors, it could actually jam the entire system because it's all linked together. There's no hydraulics at all. And the other thing to note is if you do have an electrical failure, you're going to have to get the hand crank out and wind it down, which is quite a laborious task, and you be happy to have your autopilot working if you have to do that. So as you'd expect for a 2.4 ton aircraft, the undercarriage is very robust for use on dirt strips. So don't stress if you are going to be operating into some unimproved runways. The one weakness that the Beechcraft Barons do have when it comes to landing on shorter runways is these little brakes. Quite a heavy aircraft, but very small brakes, and those big Fowler flaps carry quite a lot of lift into a lowish speed. So if you are going to go into short strips, you're generally limited not by your takeoff, but by your landing. A lot of Beechcraft owners and pilots will tell you, if you can get in, you'll always be able to get out. So the front seat of a Beechcraft Baron really is a pretty special place to be, and Aldinga Aero have done an awesome job making it feel plush and luxurious with these lambswool seat covers. But from factory, they're designed to be a very luxurious aircraft. You've got a reclinable armrest, reclinable seat, adjustable rudder pedals, and the other cool thing, in comparison to like your Senecas, amazing visibility. You can see all the way over the nose. You're sitting up higher than the engines, so visibility is fantastic, which is somewhat unusual for a multi-engine piston aircraft. So the fuselage is tapered. Now, shoulder room up front is pretty decent, but as we move aft in the aircraft, you will find it gets tighter and tighter, particularly if you've got that 3rd row of aft seats in it. Now, not as much shoulder room as you'd find in your comparative Cessna 310s, for example, but that's the price you pay because this aircraft is faster. It's fine for a guy like me. I'm about 6 foot, about 180 pounds. But if you had a couple of really large sort of fellas in the front, I think you'd find you'd be rubbing shoulders and it would be a little bit tight. Unfortunately, the lovely ergonomics of the cockpit doesn't quite carry over to the controls and the panel. You've got, first of all, this gigantic Beechcraft bar, which is available in a single pole. However, this one's got the dual pole in it. It blocks your gear and flap lever, which coincidentally are the opposite way around to what you'd find them in most other aircraft. So something to watch there if you do fly one. A lot of accidents have been caused by people going and inadvertently retracting the gear on the rollout after landing. That's one of the reasons the insurance premiums are up on this aircraft. So a lot of owners recommend don't retract anything until you're clear of the runway. Make sure you can identify it. The other thing you'll find is, unlike a lot of aircraft, the throttle lever is in the middle. So very unusual. Most aircraft are mixture pitch in the center and then power on the left. Beechcraft wanted to do something different, so the throttle's in the middle. Now, fortunately, in this aircraft, they are actually color coordinated. You've got red for the mixture, blue for the prop, and black for the throttles. But be aware, in some of the early ones, they're black, black, and the throttle is still in the middle. Bit of a gotcha. So this aircraft's been retrofitted with Aspen Evolution avionics for the PFD and MFD, and a Garmin GTN 750 and an earlier 430 for the primary and secondary navcom. So really nice avionics. Moving further down the main pedestal here, you've got your aileron, rudder, and trim tabs. Elevator trim tabs, and then your cow flaps. Now they're either open or closed. There's no intermediate setting, and they're just manual. And then down on the floor, you've got your fuel selectors, which, unlike the earlier ones, had main, aux, crossfeed, and off. This one has been simplified through the use of effectively having one main tank in each wing. In reality, it's 3 tanks stitched together, but they're quite simple. They're either on, off, or crossfeed. Anyway, I think we've shown you enough about the aircraft. Let's go for a fly in it. So when I'm flying a twin, something I always do is a pre-takeoff safety brief. If I've got passengers, usually I'll do it in my head, but for the sake of the video, I'm going to do it out loud. We're taking off on a 1,000-meter strip, which means once we're airborne and the gear's up, we're going to be committed to flying. This aircraft, I'm expecting with the current loads and conditions today that it will climb on one engine, which is always a consideration. So if we have any abnormality or an engine failure on the ground, I'll abort the takeoff and come to a full stop using brakes. If we have an engine failure airborne below blue line, the gear's still down, I'll land on the remaining runway if there is any, or in the runway beyond the end of the paddock. In the paddock beyond the end of the runway rather. Alright, if I'm airborne above blue line, gears up, that's it, we're committed to flying. I'll control the aircraft, then go through my immediate actions, and I always touch them. So, because I fly a few different aircraft, it's important that I always touch them so I know where everything is. So the immediate actions, once I've controlled the plane, will be mixture up, pitch up, power up, gear up, flap up, they're running the wrong way in this aircraft. And then, of course, identify dead leg, dead engine, confirm with the throttle. Once I've confirmed it is the correct engine that I've checking, I'll feather that engine and then continue climbing away at blue line, which is 99 with half ball and 5 to the live, continuing to 1,000 AGL before I make a decision on where I'm going to divert to and land. But quite likely, given the conditions today, we'll come back and land at Murray Bridge. Murray Bridge traffic, Baron Yankee Indy Charlie enters a backtrack runway 19 for a departure to the south, Murray Bridge. I always taxi with a bit of backstick in these, especially on these rough runways. A little bit of asymmetric thrust to come around. Murray Bridge traffic, Yankee Indy Charlie, line up and rolling, 19 on Murray Bridge. Okay, RPM's coming up. Alright, we got manifold, fuel pressure, RPMs, temperatures and pressures, airspeed. God, it feels good, there's so much power there. Okay, 75, we'll start to lighten there, fly her off. Through blue line, gear can come up. Then we'll pitch up to climb out at about 110. There we go, and we're getting 2,000 feet per minute. Nothing to sneeze at there, and that's not even Murray Bridge traffic. Yankee Charlie, Baron departs left crosswind runway 19, passing 2,000, climbing 2,500, tracking southeast Murray Bridge. This is always fun to look at over here, how much fuel it's burning. We're burning 90 litres on one engine and 97 on the other. And it's, what, $1, no more than that, $2.87 a litre we're currently paying at the moment. To give everyone a bit of an idea of what a Baron can do, I've just left the powers up. So I've got full manifold pressure,
2,500 RPM. We're still below max continuous power, and we're at 3,000 foot on a roughly ice a day. And oh, by the way, doing 130 litres an hour. Oh, there we go, 199, she's nearly there, come on, get to 200, there it is, 200 knot TAS at that power setting. Yeah, what do you think of your first twin, mate?
This thing kicks.
Yeah, it's awesome. Honestly, flying a Beechcraft, I was trying to explain, for those of you who've flown Beechcraft aircraft, I was trying to explain it to Josh in car terms, because obviously he's not a pilot. I'm like, honestly, flying a Beechcraft, in my opinion, is like getting in something really well built, like getting in a Bentley, as opposed to getting in, like if you're getting in an old Piper, you feel like you're getting in, you know, an old Toyota. This is like flying a Bentley. There's something about Beechcrafts. They make such a tight aircraft. Everything feels very tight. Like this aircraft's from 1979, but it feels like it was built yesterday. Everything is, you know, just slippery smooth. It cruises. It feels very solid. It feels very safe. They just build a really nice plane. Now, I believe for engineers, they're a bit more of a prick to work on, but for pilots, they're amazing. The roll rate on them is spectacular. They fly like a sports car compared to a Seneca. I love Senecas, but they do fly more like a dump truck in comparison to this that flies like a sports car. But yeah, they just build such a nice aircraft, and the Bonanzas are the same. Every Beechcraft I've flown has that same feel, just that feeling of quality, and that's why I really, really like them. This aircraft's only such a low time airframe. It's only got 3,000 hours on it. And Aldinga Aero, again, sponsoring this video. Thanks so much, guys. Ron and Jan, the owners of the aircraft. Aldinga Aero have done such a good job maintaining it, restoring it. It feels amazing to fly. Everything works, and there's not a single thing in this aircraft that doesn't work. They've coupled this earlier autopilot to the late model, the digital PFD and MFD. I know the analog to digital conversion can be a bit of a headache, but they've done an amazing job with it. So this autopilot will fly a full ILS for you. If anyone in Australia is wondering where to send their aircraft for maintenance, I couldn't recommend Aldinga Aero highly enough. The engineers there just go above and beyond to make sure that they learn the ins and outs of your aircraft and make sure that they're going to give you the best service. James is the head engineer there, and I can promise you, if he doesn't know about your aircraft, and I'd be surprised if he doesn't, he'll do the research to find out. So highly recommend them. And if you are coming from interstate, the Aldinga area is gorgeous to have a look at. It's a nice, safe little airfield there. They'll put your plane in a hangar, they'll do the maintenance, and you can go off for a bit of a holiday. Now, one of the interesting things with these Barons is the earlier models, the P charts in the POH, were based on a 15-degree flap takeoff. But for whatever reason, when they went to the bigger engines, they went for a 0 flap takeoff. So according to the POH, it uses a lot more runway, which is true if you take off with no flap. If you do use the 15 degrees though, which there's no P charts for, it uses bugger all runway. You can get it out of maybe a 600 metre runway. Of course, if you do have an engine failure with a flap down, there are some handling and performance penalties for that, so you just got to make sure you get your flaps up as part of your immediate action. The benefits of these is because it's got massive big engines on it, 285 horsepower continuous, is the single engine performance is excellent. You know, a twin engine aircraft, their maximum takeoff weight is based on their single engine performance, and the Baron is really, really good. It is different left to right. Obviously, the left engine is critical. So if we lose our left engine, we're going to get less performance than if we lost our right, just due to the whole way the the non-counter-rotating props work. But yeah, single engine performance, you're still going to see 300 to 400 feet per minute general day with a usual sort of 3/4 load on board. If you're going to go to max takeoff weight in a heavy day, then you're probably only going to see 100 to 200 feet per minute, which you know, at least it's a positive climb, unlike a lot of... I've flown a bit in these aircraft on one engine. We shut them down for training. I instruct in these aircraft. So every student we do a multi-class rating for at command flight training gets to see an engine, a full shutdown, and an air start, which is just a really cool experience. I think a lot of us who have flown twins have got that, still remember that first time we shut down a engine. Got the photo of the feathered prop out there, and then went through the process to restart it. Murray Bridge traffic, Yankee Charlie Baron is 8 miles to the west, passing 1,700 on descent inbound for the circuit. And 2-4, that's 2 minutes, Murray Bridge. Murray Bridge traffic, Yankee Charlie Baron joins the midfield, left crosswind, runway 19 at full stop, Murray Bridge. Right, we'll do the final checks, cow flaps are open, red mixtures all the way up. Blue props all the way up to full fine, that'll slow us down a bit. And 3 greens. Alright, in we go, ground effect, outer idle. On we go, on the brakes. Not too heavy, otherwise they skid. Now we're down through 60, now I can get a bit heavier on the brakes. Alrighty guys, I hope you enjoyed that video on what is absolutely by far one of my most favourite aircraft. I'm absolutely stoked and so lucky to be able to fly this aircraft for work and instruct in it, because they are such a magnificent aircraft. The 55 Baron, the baby Baron with the big engines, as this one's known as, is an absolute joy to fly. Now if you're in the market for a used Baron, the 55s can be had for cheaper than an A36 Bonanza. Maintenance is a little bit higher than you might find on like a typical Seneca. And same thing with the insurance premiums. You know, the gear and flap around the wrong way certainly has something to do with that, as well as the mixture, the prop, and the power being in a slightly different configuration. The later 58s, they went back to a bit more of a normal one, and they got rid of this gigantic Beechcraft bar. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this video. It was absolutely one of my favourite ones to write and shoot, and of course fly. I love flying this plane. So if you enjoyed this, check out our other videos. We've got a bunch of other walkarounds. There's going to be more twins coming up. And of course, please like, comment and subscribe. Comment on what you think of Barons and Beechcraft aircraft in particular. You've heard what I think about them. Now I want to hear what you guys think about them. And of course, click that subscribe button. See you in the next one.